Let's go over the assignment description for Project 3, the Memorandum. And the subtitle there is your strategies for recommendation report. This is essentially a proposal addressed to me for what you want to do for the recommendation report, which is that large culminating a project due really near the end of the course. So the format for this is in the form of a memo. You can see that here. I think you can see some examples of that in Canvas. So that part, pretty simple. You can figure that out. But I want to go over the what part, the how part, and then the rhetorical structure part, which is really a subpoint, I guess, of the how part. I want to go over that closely because this assignment is the one assignment that tends to be the most confusing to students, or the one that students end up doing sort of the wrong thing, at least at first, before some, at least in the first draft. So I'd like to address those problems before the first draft. So let's look at this. So what is the what? It's a write a 2-page memo addressed to your course instructor. That's me. So I'm the intended audience for this particular assignment. The goal of your memo is to persuade your instructor to approve your strategies for constructing your recommendation report. So that's the central goal. The goal is to persuade me that you have a plan for the recommendation report. You have a plan, you have a company, you have something worked out here. Now, the second part after the comma, which is maybe where sometimes students get confused a little bit, is describing the recommendation report. So what is the recommendation report? Well, what are you going to do in that? You will identify a problem within a specific company or organization and persuade a specific audience to take action. This audience is not me, right? The sort of imagined audience for the recommendation report is the actual company. But for the memo assignment, for the one that we're doing right now, for this short one, the intended audience is the instructors, myself. All right. So let's look at a good note here. Pay attention to rhetorical structure and the how section. And really, we want to look at this how section to just get a sense of what we're talking about. So basic idea here is that you choose a company or an organization, and you identify really two things eventually. The first thing is going to be a problem, something that needs to be solved or addressed. And then the second thing is really the solution to the problem. Right? So let's take a really silly example. Something like you want to choose Burger King as your company. So it has to be a specific one, right? It can't be this generic thing. So you choose Burger King, and what you find, and again, I'm not sure, is that the company, that Burger King's clientele, that its customers are not really happy. They're not really getting anything different from the experience, and you believe that the solution to that is that everybody who works there should wear one of those paper king crown things, and you believe that that's going to improve their customer satisfaction and improve their profits, et cetera, right? So that's an example. Obviously, I don't think it would be a particularly good topic, but I'm going to use that as we look at this. So you would choose a company, and then you would look at this part, which is the rhetorical structure. Now, you need to use these subheadings in your memo. Repeat, you need to use these subheadings in your memo. And you need to look closely at these questions, because these are the questions that I will look at when I'm evaluating your memo. So when I'm grading it and I'm looking at the rubric, I'm going to be looking at these things. In addition, these are the questions that will help me understand whether you're on track. So it's not just about the grading aspect, the grading is tied into what's going to be productive. So let's work through this so we can see and hopefully clarify any misconceptions even before they occur. So the description: what problem or challenge will you address in your recommendation report? Okay, so the problem is, for my hypothetical one, is Burger King's customers are unhappy. Write an overview in 2 or 3 sentences explaining why the memo has been written. And why is the problem challenge important to address? So really, the reason the memo has been written is to address, well, the memo has been written to get approval for your project, and your project should be approved because the issue is important to address for Burger King. If they don't address it, then the company, if they don't wear those king hats, the company will eventually go out of business or something like that, right? Hypothetical, semi-comical there. So then we look at the objective. What should your audience know and do/change as a result of your recommendation report? So this is your solution action. Remember, it's asking as a result of your recommendation report, not as a result of the memo, right? Not as a result of what you're writing the 2-page thing on that you're submitting soon after watching this video. You're asking what they would do after the recommendation report or as a result of that. And for ours is for our hypothetical one, is that they would realize that every one of their employees has to wear those crowns, right? That's your solution. That's your proposal there. Now, information. What evidence will you need to gather to support your recommendations in the recommendation report? So that's a more general question. What are you going to need to find? What type of information? So it could be statistics on a particular thing. It could be, statistics showing the depth of the problem, but also showing how weird gimmicks and things like that actually could help solve this problem, right? So you need to brainstorm the type of information you're looking for. You don't actually need to find the information, which gets us to the next question. Where do you think you will find this information? Well, this is brainstorming. Where are you going to look? Are you going to look at the Northeastern databases? Are you going to use Google Scholar? Are you going to look at other resources? Right? You want to brainstorm these possible ideas. It's not necessarily the case that you will actually know that you're going to find it there, but you're brainstorming, and I'm looking for a logical sort of thinking through of the problem. Also, how will this information help you persuade your reader of your recommendation? So why is this going to be helpful? And as a note, do not conduct any research. Now, audience, really, really important here. This, to me, is one that really stands out because it shows whether students are on the right track, and if you can have a clear audience for a particular writing assignment, the task becomes a lot easier. And for this assignment, it's actually pretty easy to have a clear audience, but oftentimes students will get confused or won't be able to find that right away. So really important, who is the audience for your recommendation report? Right, for ours, yeah, it's Burger King, but then I would also have to figure out who I don't need names, but who would have the authority to make that decision to say that all the franchises would need to do this. And so it could be the CEO, it could be a board, it could be a mixture, whatever it is, you want to identify that. And then you would have to say, okay, so why might your audience oppose your recommendation? What are they going to say? Oh, I don't think that's going to work. right? In a lot of cases, it's going to be money. It's going to be a shift in resources. Um, I don't think in our case the paper crowns are going to cost that much, but there are certainly other ups, um, certainly other things that they would oppose. Now, if your audience implements your recommendation, what demands, pressures, expectations might your audience encounter as a result? So you're thinking through, you really need to do this to do well on any, I think, writing assignment, but especially one that's very practical and specific. Uh, think through what the audience values, right? Think through the troubles and the work and energy and all the things that will go on from their perspective related to your proposal for the company. That's really key here, because that is how you actually structure your argument, because you're trying to address these concerns. The best recommendation reports are the ones that are really incisive in addressing the likely concerns of the audience, not ones that make some really long and maybe important argument, but actually aren't arguing something directly towards their audience. Really important there. And then the conclusion, what are the next steps in the development of your recommendation report? When will you complete those steps? And then it says this section will probably be a single paragraph in length. So just that last part, kind of, what is your plan? It's really just to get you to think about and plan out a little bit your completion of this larger project. So I just want to reiterate really one key point here, because oftentimes students do this. That one key point is you don't have to make, and I'll rephrase that, you should not be making your argument yet. You should not be making your argument about that solution. So I wouldn't, in my recommendation report, start making my argument about why paper crowns are so important to the future of Burger King, right? You can make the argument that there's a problem that needs to be addressed to some extent. Even that you don't have to go into detail. And then you talk about possible or a way that you might solve that problem, and then talk about where you might get information, and then audience evaluation. But you're not actually going into the argument. So it shouldn't, in no way should there be something like, here are like 3 reasons that Burger King should do this. No, that's not now. That's you'll get into much more greater detail in the recommendation report. That's the job of the recommendation report, is to persuade of that solution. But here, your job is just to really persuade me that you have an organization, you have a general objective, you have a sense of where to find information, you've thought through who the audience is, and you've thought through a little bit about the time frame for completing this assignment.